How's it going, guys? Vaibhav here from GN Tech, and welcome to a camera comparison between the Oppo Reno and the Honor View 20. I'm recording this from the front-facing cameras on both of these smartphones at 1080p resolution. Now, I'm quickly going to get up and give you guys an overall idea of how both of these cameras manage to capture front-facing footage as well as the audio coming out from the front camera. But with that being said, I'm going to move into the primary camera specifications now, followed by some photo and video samples from the primary cameras. Oppo's Reno has a dual camera primary setup as well as that unique pivot hinge style front camera. This is the lower end Oppo Reno, so it's priced well below Honor's View 20, which has a formidable dual camera setup as well as the front pinhole style camera off to the side of its display. Like always, we'll start with some flower photography. Here we see that the View 20's image already has a lot more saturation than Oppo's. The AI on the View 20 heightens this, whereas the Chroma boost on the Reno does a good job, and I'd say Oppo's image is more true to life here. Oppo also has its own AI, which isn't the most aggressive, so if you're looking for that saturated look with some AI adjustments, you'll be better off enabling both Chroma boost and AI when taking photos, although the separate options might be a bit confusing. Here's another sample from both phones where each has its own color tones. I like the look of the Oppo Reno because of how it processes the greens, and to me, it has the slightly sharper photo too. With Chroma Boost enabled here, the overly aggressive colors from the Reno do not look very realistic compared to the more controlled lighting from the View 20's image with AI enabled. Of course, again, you can enable just AI on the Oppo Reno for a more realistic photo. Like most phones have become, it's incredibly hard to point out a clear difference in day-to-day photos. The difference AI makes is more visible from the View 20's sample and makes exposure a bit more controlled. While I was here, I also put the 48 megapixel modes on both phones to the test, where one, the color profiles are notably different, but if you crop in, I actually think the Reno is holding up better. There's even an AI Ultra Clarity mode on the View 20 which I used, and if you crop in here, the difference in results are still very marginal. I think this mode would come in really handy for small text recognition at a distance, but in the real world, not so much. Near the same area, I also took the chance to test zoom on both phones. At 1x zoom, you cannot point out any significant difference without or with AI mode enabled on both phones. We'll zoom into the Rolex buildings at 2x zoom, where again the results are neck and neck. Some faraway detailing of the buildings seems to be better from the Reno, but with its AI the sharpness is enhanced compared to the subdued AI on the View 20 from this sample. But going all the way at 10x zoom, clearly the View 20 is better than the Reno for its detail captured. It is still not significantly better given the price difference, and that stays true even when AI is enabled. But something most phones have become very good at is portraits. Here I'd say the subject is pretty complex, but both phones have handled it well. There are a few blemishes at the edges from either phone, but it doesn't make a big difference. With the View 20, you can zoom out 1x, which lets you capture the same depth effect with more detail off to the sides, at the cost of worse edge detection. And if you look at the small crevices on the plant, that is a bit notable. Similarly, for portraits of people, the most visible difference is color. The Reno's colors are way more natural compared to the View 20, which oversaturates on the purples, and the tinge carries across to my face too. If you look at the edge detection, I don't think either phone struggles too much, and you'd have to really pay attention to find the biggest flaws. Flipping to selfies, the View 20 seems to capture the more detail in photos. I'd say both photos are actually good, but the more natural one is from the View 20, while the Reno has an aggressive beauty mode that enhances the face a bit too much compared to the View 20. There's a separate AI selfie mode on the View 20 too, which to be honest doesn't make a big difference. Looking at portraits, I'd say the blurring stays more consistent from the Oppo Reno, but again, the more natural colors are from the View 20. In fact, I'd also like to point out here that because of the View 20's sideward pinhole camera, selfies are a lot more difficult to take, but that could just be me and my lack of experience with selfies. Anyways, I think this is a good time to look at some nighttime samples. The warmer image from the Oppo Reno stands out for me, but noise levels are better controlled from the View 20. With both phones' night modes, you see a great deal of enhancement, and depending on your color taste, you'd like one over the other. I just feel like the Oppo Reno's image in this case looks more natural, whereas the View 20's has this green hue over it. This is a more difficult night photo where the View 20's nighttime processing stands out and captures more detail in the trees and foreground. With night mode, there's a great deal of enhancement, and here the Reno's light control is better. Both phones' night modes take the same 5 seconds to capture an image, so there's no difference here. I also took this image where clearly the brightness and overall detail from the View 20 is better. Some might prefer the warm look of the Reno, but it does sacrifice on detail. With night mode, both phones do an excellent job, but to me the View 20's image looks a bit more true to life. At night, I don't think it's a good idea to be using Chroma boost or AI modes from either phones because the best results come from when using the night mode on each phones. Without night mode though, I'd say the View 20 has the superior processing and detail retention, especially for scenes like this. And night mode definitely enhances the images from both phones, although the View 20 stands out. I took this opportunity to zoom in 10 times with both phones and neither did a very good job. But with night mode, the View 20 does seem to have the better processing and you can faintly make out the yellow text, something you can't do from the Oppo Reno sample. As far as flash photography goes, I think the Oppo Reno sample stands out because of detailing both in the foreground as well as in the background. But the white balance from the View 20 is definitely better given its cooler tones. And ending with selfies, the case is similar to the morning samples. The natural look from the View 20 seems better for me, but with portrait mode, there's a hint of blurriness from the View 20 sample that the Reno does not experience, and so, despite the beautified image, the Reno has the better picture clarity. Now, onto video, we'll start with some full HD footage. There's a bit more sharpness to the footage of the Oppo Reno, but that's about it. Stabilization is also a bit smoother from the Reno, with the View 20 showing some jerky movement from time to time. But when running, the View 20's footage seems to be smoother than the Oppo Reno, although not considerably better. Looking at 4K samples, once again the colors, quality and sharpness levels from the Reno are better. The difference is that the Reno's footage is shakier than the View 20's when walking. This holds true even when running, which tells us that the electronic image stabilization from the View 20 at 4K resolution is slightly better. Both phones suffer at night where quality drops significantly. The Reno picks up a warmer tone for video, whereas the View 20 has the cooler tone. The Reno's quality still holds better than the View 20's, but both videos show a jerk motion to footage every now and again. 4K footage improves quality from both phones, but again, it is the Reno's that is better. Stabilization wise though, the View 20 has the advantage even though it has the jerkier movement. So that's about it for this comprehensive look. I think this will give you a very good idea of both phones' camera capabilities and help you choose which phone has the better value when it comes to camera performance. Thanks for watching, this was Vaibhav and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.